Hype is a very dangerous thing. To hype a car up to a car-buying public that includes the RS Owners Club that are prepared to believe every single word is playing with fire. After not months, but years, the Focus RS finally arrived at the tail end of last year, and it was one of the most eagerly anticipated car launches of recent times. The entire male population of Essex was on Valium. Fingernails were bitten down to flesh, and Ford, well, they just lit the bright blue touch paper, crossed their fingers and stood back. So, what was the verdict? The car is said to be inspired, of course, by the Focus RS of the World Rally Championships. But, well, it's a funny word, that, inspired. I might be inspired by Ruud van Nistelrooy, but trying to play football like him is another matter. I play football like Dick Van Dyke. From the outside, the RS is truly stunning and has more than a passing resemblance to its world-conquering all-terrain munching cousin. The stance is much more squat than the standard car, and it has bite-your-legs-off styling all round. And the components too are made by the same people as on the WRC car. The wheels are made by Oz, the brakes by Brembo, the seats by Sparco, etc, etc. So, how good is it? Was it worth the wait? Was the hype justified? And just how inspired by the WRC car is it? Do you know, I've just had a thought. That last bit about just how inspired is this car by the WRC vehicle, well, I can't answer that because I've never driven one. But the rest, I'll give it a go. When Ford put the incredible Escort Cosworth out to stud all of those years ago, they did promise us a 300 horsepower four-wheel drive replacement. Well, someone had their fingers crossed, because what they've delivered is a front-wheel drive 212 brake horsepower car, and they made us wait a very long time. But they may have delivered late, but boy have they delivered. Firstly, there's the engine, a super-sounding 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged unit that doesn't sound dissimilar to its esteemed cousin, the Escort Cosworth. It'll really sing for you up in the high revs. It's not quite as stunning as the incredible VTEC from Honda, but musical and inspiring nonetheless. The overriding joy of this engine definitely resides in the mid-range. Down at the bottom there is significant turbo lag, and at the top end it doesn't feel too comfy either. But in the mid-range, between 3.5 and 6,000 revs, and with clever use of the throttle and the brilliant 5-speed gearbox, you get a huge amount of torque, enough to last Parky a lifetime of shows. Now, there was controversy, to say the least, when Ford announced that the RS was going to be driven only from the front. The car was supposed to challenge the Audi S4s, Evos and Imprezas of this world, all of which have 4 feet to run with. But Ford have simply said it doesn't need it. Well, they would say that, wouldn't they? Now, reading between the lines on the four-wheel drive issue, it seems that there was huge problems getting power to the rear of the car that involved a lot more design and a lot more cost, which is why Ford say they don't need it. But all of those other cars that we mentioned, the Audi S4, the Impreza and the Evo, all have four-wheel drive, so you pays your money, you takes your choice. And to a degree, it doesn't need four-wheel drive, because on a nice smooth surface, the RS has an incredible amount of grip. There's also a noticeable absence of wheel spin, despite the absence of traction control, although put your foot down hard over some crests, and there's a disappointing amount of torque steer, which would be eliminated if there were 4 wheels powering it. But that's being picky. Considering the power onslaught going through to the front, the car performs brilliantly. But get the car on anything other than a nice smooth A-road, and you start to notice where the Focus is, well, not a letdown, but let's just say irritating. That's a polite way of saying it, because hit a pothole or a minor bump at speed and the car will deviate, and you have to go routes that you wouldn't have thought possible, let alone planned. The car has got a mind of its own at speed, and you need to keep both hands firmly on the steering wheel when you're driving at speed. But this car is all about performance and handling. That 2-litre 4-cylinder engine might not sound like much, but with that huge turbocharger, it generates 212 brake horsepower, enough to get this little car from 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds and onto a top speed of 144 miles per hour. So, was this car worth waiting for? Oh boy, yes. Was the hype justified? Well, probably. Although to keep mentioning this RS in the same breath as the WRC Focus is to get just a little bit carried away. But boy and girl racers the world over, and especially in Essex, will love this car. And some boy racers like me that got older and fatter, they'll love it too.